Do you know who she is? When I painted this portrait, that question was actually part of the point. I wanted to paint people who have made significant contributions to Black history, but I didn't necessarily want to use the photographs that everyone already recognized. I wanted you to have to look a little longer. Maybe you recognize the face, maybe you don't, but hopefully you become curious enough to want to know who she is. This painting is part of a series I created called Colored Paths. Colored Paths was my second and completed series of paintings, and at the time, I was still very new to painting portraits. Before this series, I had completed 4 paintings from another series I called Golden Girl. Those paintings were completely different. Golden Girl consisted of freehand portraits of people I imagined. There wasn't a real person I was trying to make the painting look like, so I had a lot more freedom. Those were really the paintings where I started figuring out how faces worked in paint. By the time I started Colored Paths, I wanted to see if I could take what I had taught myself and actually paint recognizable people, and that was a much bigger challenge. I started Colored Paths as my contribution to the Black Lives Matter movement. At the time, I was thinking a lot about how Black people were being represented and talked about. I wanted to contribute something positive, but I also realized there were huge gaps in my own knowledge of Black history. There were people whose names I knew, but I couldn't tell you much about them. There were other people whose work I knew without necessarily knowing the person behind it. And then there were people I had never heard of at all. So I wanted to create something that would allow me to learn while hopefully encouraging other people to learn with me. But I didn't want it to feel like a history lesson. I wanted it to be visual. I wanted it to be entertaining. I wanted it to be interactive. The paintings needed to make you curious before they gave you the answer. That's where the design of the series came from. Every painting is large, about 2 feet wide, 4 feet tall. I wanted them to be bold and almost impossible to ignore when you walk past them. The portraits themselves are painted in grayscale, but behind every person is a really vibrant color. For me, the grayscale represented the past. The color was a way of bringing that person forward again, while also saying something about who they were. Each background color was selected to represent something about the person's personality, their craft, their work, or the energy I associated with them. So even before you know who you're looking at, the painting is already giving you clues. The way I chose people for Colored Paths was actually pretty specific. First, they needed to have made a contribution to Black history that I thought was worth learning more about. Second, I considered how familiar people were with them. Some of the people in this series are extremely well known, others aren't, and I liked having that mixture. But there was also a very practical third requirement. I had to be able to find a photograph of them when they were young that I actually believe I could paint, because remember, I was still learning. So there were definitely photographs that I looked at and thought, nope, not ready for that. I needed an image that challenged me without making me immediately regret starting a 4-foot tall painting. The age of the people in these paintings was intentional too. I specifically looked for photographs of them as young adults. Most historical figures become associated with one or two photographs taken later in their lives. We recognize the hair, the glasses, the clothes. Sometimes we recognize a photograph before we even really recognize the person. I wanted to remove some of that familiarity, because if I showed you a younger version of someone you thought you knew, there was a chance you would stop and ask, who is that? And once you ask the question, you're participating in the painting. That's exactly what I wanted. This portrait was the 5th painting I completed for Colored Pass, so by the time I got to her, I had already painted 4 people for the series and 4 portraits for Golden Girls. That means I had 8 finished portraits behind me, which sounds like experience now. At the time, 8 paintings felt like a lot. I was definitely becoming more comfortable with paint, but I was still figuring out what I was doing almost every time I started another face. And looking at this footage now, I can see that learning happening. One of the interesting things about painting portraits is that there's usually a point where the painting looks absolutely nothing like the person, and you just have to keep going. That's something I had to learn. When I first started painting, I would get nervous really early in the process because something looked wrong, the proportions looked strange, the shadows were too dark, one eye looked completely different from the other, and sometimes a painting goes through a stage where you're pretty sure you've ruined it. But eventually I started learning not to judge a portrait too early. A face is made up of relationships. The shadow only makes sense once the highlight is there. The eye may look wrong until the nose is established. The mouth might look too dark until the rest of the values catch up. So a lot of this series was me learning to trust the process long enough to get to the recognizable part. And this particular woman gave me a lot to work with. She was glamorous, she was theatrical, she was incredibly expressive. But what interested me most was that the version of her most people recognize represents only one part of her life, because she wasn't just an entertainer. She was also involved in war, politics, activism, and the civil rights movement. So, have you figured out who she is yet? This is Josephine Baker. Josephine Baker was born Frida Josephine McDonald in St. Louis, Missouri in 1906. She began performing when she was young and eventually made her way to New York before leaving the United States for Paris in the 1920s. And Paris completely changed her career. She became an international star as a dancer, singer, and actress. For a lot of people, this is Josephine Baker they know, the glamorous performer, the elaborate costumes, the stage presence, and of course, the famous banana skirt. But that is only part of her story. During World War II, Baker assisted the French resistance. Her celebrity gave her access to people and places that could be useful for gathering information, and she helped transmit intelligence for the resistance. After the war, she was honored by France for her service. And when she returned to the United States, she used her fame in another way. She challenged segregation. She refused to perform for segregated audiences and became increasingly involved in the fight for civil rights. In 1963, she spoke at the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, the same march where Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his I Have a Dream speech. So the woman you're watching paint wasn't just famous. She continually used the access that fame gave her to challenge things she believed were wrong. And this is exactly why I wanted to make Colored Past. Before researching these paintings, I primarily associated Josephine Baker with entertainment. I knew the image, I knew the performer, but there was much more to know about the person. That's what happened repeatedly while I made these series. I would start with one fact that made someone interesting enough to paint, and then I would discover 5 other things about them that I had never learned. The painting gave me a reason to stop and learn about the person, and hopefully seeing the painting does something similar for somebody else. For Josephine's background, I chose yellow. I associated yellow with her energy, confidence, optimism, and ability to command attention. Josephine Baker had a presence that was difficult to ignore, both as a performer and as someone who used her visibility to stand up for what she believed in. Yellow felt bright, expressive, and almost theatrical, which connected to her career as an entertainer. But it also represented the boldness that seemed to carry through so many different parts of her life. I wanted the background to capture some of that energy rather than simply choosing a color because it looked good with a portrait. That's something I did for every person in Colored Past. The colors became another part of their story. The portrait tells you what they look like. The background tells you something about how I interpreted who they are. Eventually, these paintings became more than something I was making at home. The complete series was displayed for several months, and watching people interact with them was probably one of the most rewarding parts of the project. People would stop, they would guess who someone was, they would read about them, they would talk to each other about the people they recognized and the ones they didn't. And that was exactly what I hoped would happen. The paintings became a way to educate people without asking them to sit down for a history lesson. They created conversations, they created curiosity, and unexpectedly, they also became encouragement for people who had stopped making art. I had people tell me that seeing the paintings made them want to start painting again, and I really loved that. Watching this footage now is also interesting because I can see where I was technically as a painter. There are things I would probably approach differently today. There are decisions I would change. There are areas I would paint differently. But I don't want to separate those imperfections from what this series means to me. These paintings document me teaching myself. This was painting number 5 in the series. I wasn't supposed to know everything yet. Every portrait taught me something that I carried to the next one. So when you watch all 11 Colored Past videos together, you're not just watching 11 people appear on canvas. You're watching me learn how to paint them. And that's one of the reasons I decided to go back through this series now. I wanted to share more of the story behind the paintings, the people I chose, what I learned about them, and what I learned about painting along the way. There are 11 portraits in Colored Past. Josephine Baker was number 5, and every one of them has a different story.